From yesterday, because I think for the most part, we all kind of picked Chiefs Eagles to be here. Am I wrong?
Well, first and foremost, welcome back, everybody, to the Second Mouse podcast. Q is currently dissenting from this podcast, and he wants to go straight into pain, which is on brand for him. But
cancel Tom, yes. That's right.
That remains to be seen. But if you are watching on Twitch or YouTube, do us a favor and give us a like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Discord as well. Jump into the conversation. We're always responding to folks that are in there. Got a nice little crew of just absolute goons in there right now, but Goon the squad. More the merrier.
We'll be weirdly intimate with you.
Yes. Yeah. We'll have a lot of heart-to-hearts.
If Elon Musk
be intimate with this guy, don't you?
No. If Elon Musk had any fucking balls, answer. Okay? If Elon Musk had any fucking balls, he would stop shadow banning people who are doing #Tom, cancel Tom on Twitter, okay?
I mean, I just want to
get movement for the is alive. We are the silent majority. #cancel Tom on Twitter.
I'm gonna write that down and put it in my dream diary after this. But since we're on to dreams and nightmares, let's go on to your nightmare for the both of you yesterday, which was the Eagles having literally no opposition to get into the Super Bowl.
Tom, you're in this boat with us, buddy. Keep paddling. Come on.
I mean, you're had Josh Johnson as a quarterback at one point. So
he's not though, Gatto, because his team is just like a terrible wreck. So he's kind of
were supposed to be that same beaten wreck though this year. And it didn't happen. So
Joe Shane and Brian Dable, baby. I don't know what to say.
I would like to point out Ron Rivera still considers the season a success. So
Ron Rivera thinks he's playing next week, by the way.
Riverboat Ron, man, I'm telling you. That guy, like, as long as he just goes into Daniel Snyder's office and goes, "Hey, I support the troops," and he's like, lifetime contract.
Yep.
Any major takeaways for you guys other than fucking Eagles are gonna win the Super Bowl and I'm gonna haunt my dreams?
Oh man, you know what the most annoying part is? How easily they've just cruised all year.
So that's interesting. That's interesting you said that, Gatto, because I actually had a question for you guys. There's a lot of chatter about the Eagles having the easiest route to the Super Bowl ever. And I don't know if there's any way to quantify that. Because, like, what goes into an easy matchup? But they did have the Giants team that's clearly not ready yet. They did get a Brock Purdy-less 49ers team for the most part.
They got an everybody-less 49ers team.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, Gatto, we'll start with you. Do you feel as though that they are a legitimate team? Do you feel like maybe they've just got an easy ride this way?
I mean, my copium makes me want to say that it's an easy ride, but like they're a solid team. You could kick the wheels on this bad boy and it will roll over most teams. Don't get me wrong.
The defense is just nasty.
Dude, it's the team has talent all around the board. I wonder where the point of failure is on that team. I think it's like if you remove the quarterback, we have a totally different ball game here.
I think they proved that, right, with Gardner Minshew taking over and losing those 2 games in the season. I mean, they lost 3 games all year, and they 2 of them with Gardner Minshew quarterback.
To be fair, you can make that argument against any team that has a top 15 quarterback as well. Like we saw a great example of that on Saturday. Like if you and we saw it last week too with Patrick Mahomes going out, and if you remove Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes from their team, they're completely different. So
for sure. Yeah. It's true.
And honestly, I don't even know if I agree with that 100%. Like their run game is just so fucking dirty. And that offensive, I mean, Jeff Stoutland's the best offensive line coach in the league by far.
I think you're touching it on the nose though. It's definitely that offensive line is just insane. If they they couldn't get over how low the offensive line would get when they were making those big pushes. They just couldn't help themselves but go into replay and be like, look how low these guys fucking get. Oh my God.
Greg Olsen was creaming everywhere about that, man. I'm fucking
technique.
It's and I for one hope that Jason Kelce is going to retire after this year because I'm fucking sick of seeing him. He's been a minute. He's going to be a Hall of Famer by far. But Lane Johnson playing through a fucking core injury. Mulata, who was a fucking a 7th round draft pick, they turned into a superstar left tackle. It's just fucking enough already. Like I'm fucking Landon Dickerson from Alabama, a guy I wanted. They get him in the 2nd round. He's been a stud this year. I'm just fucking sick of it, man. I really.
So I think this is going to be
top 10 pick in the draft. It drives me fucking insane. Sorry.
I mean, they draft well, and that's always been kind of a reoccurring theme for the Eagles. Even during like the Chip Kelly era, they still were able to find guys.
Howie.
The one thing I would say, I'm really curious to see how it's going to play against Kansas City, and we'll get to the Kansas City game shortly. But Q, you were making a point about this. Their defense is just smothering, and they might have played some sorry teams, but at the same time, they still led the league in sacks. They had 70 sacks in the regular season. The closest team was Kansas City at 55.
By the way, 72 was the record.
Yeah.
But I think it's the 85 Bears, I believe. It's fucking sickening. And like Drawn Hargrave was a guy that they got, and he's had 11 sacks at like a defensive tackle position. Hassan Reddick had 16 sacks. He was a guy they signed in free agency. Just hitting on everybody. I mean, TJ Edwards, I think, is one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. Dave Gettleman fucked up and ruined the Giants team. So now we had to give away James Bradbury for free. And they got him for nothing. Darius Slay got him and then they stole Chauncey Gardner-Johnson away from the Saints for nothing. But like, what's most impressive though is Howie Roseman has, by the way, clear executive of the year, by the way. Clear executive of the year. He's made some major fucking misses, and yet this team is still okay. Mind you, I was sitting there on draft night a couple years ago, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, they're gonna get Justin Jefferson, and I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. And they're on the board, and they don't take Justin Jefferson, they take Jalen Reagor. The next pick, the Minnesota Vikings take Justin Jefferson. And imagine this fucking team with Justin Jefferson on it. It would have been even worse.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's made so many misses and yet still has so many hits, it's just
I mean, well, part of that too is like, is the draft everything? Or is it like also making sure you have the right coaches to match and pair with the right players, right?
It's also just being able to find guys too.
Hassan Reddick was a guy that was not really like Drawn Hargrave, the same thing. TJ Edwards, the late round pick, getting Darius Slay for a pretty cheap trade. He's also smart too, because he'll get guys on expiring contracts, and he knows that the compensatory pick's going to kick in. He knows how to game the system better than anybody. And when I say game the system, I don't mean he's like cheating or anything. I'm just literally using the rules to his advantage. So smart guy,
playing the game.
Literally doing the right things.
You're playing the game on the field and then off the field the rest of the year, right? It's so he goes to work the day after the Super Bowl,
and I'm so pissed because he did a great job building those teams in the past, and then Chip Kelly squeezed him out. Literally, I think it was year 2 when Chip Kelly was there. He ended up getting him fired. And then Chip Kelly was basically the GM for like a year, and they were like, "Oh wait, he doesn't know what he's doing." So they fired him and brought Howie Roseman back.
If I'm an owner and I'm interviewing head coaches, and one of their requirements is they have to be the GM, I'm immediately saying, absolutely not. We're going to find somebody else. Like, how many examples do you need of head coaches who said, "Well, I also want to be able to pick the players," and they suck at it, or they can't balance the workload for both being the head coach of a professional team and being the one who's also driving the contract conversations, the personnel decisions. And there are just so many examples of how fucked that has been. Bill O'Brien is a great one. Chip Kelly is another. Like, you really should not do that unless you've been in the league for like 25 years as a coach.
I think if some owners eventually get the hint that, or they believe that, oh, he's the guy, like He's the next, because Bill Belichick is essentially the GM of the Patriots, right?
He also drafts like shit too.
He does draft like shit. Well, you know what? I'm gonna say he drafts wide receivers very poorly. He does draft a lot of really good players, but it's just the wide receivers he just has a blind spot towards them.
Yeah.
But I think like especially because they have so much money invested in them, like the Philadelphia Eagles had so much money invested in Chip Kelly that they kind of felt like they had to let him do it his way, and then like if he fails, we can just move on. Which obviously he did in spectacular fashion. The Bill O'Brien thing, still to this day, is just so funny. He fucked that team so bad.
What a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he's back in the league. He's building up that resume for another run. I'm telling you, it's give it a year or two.
Yeah.
Buy high on Mac Jones in fantasy, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's the one shining light there. I do want to go back to the 49ers, though.
Yeah.
Q, you had asked, like, are there any big takeaways here? This is going to sound bad, but I think it's going to work out well for him in the future. But DeMeco Ryans and that defense kind of just falling apart in the middle of that game with all the penalties and poor execution. I mean, they were pretty much put in an impossible situation where they're like, we're literally not going to score any points on offense. We need you guys to kind of do it all.
Yeah.
And I hope this isn't misinterpreted incorrectly, but I hope people take a pass on him this year, because right now the options that are available are the Texans, and they've fired their last two coaches after a year apiece. Yeah. And I think DeMeco Ryans has shown that he is qualified enough to be a head coach, but he's also good enough to be able to pick where he wants to go. I don't think he needs to join up on a bottom feeder like the Texans. They're going to have a high pick. That's great. They always have high picks outside of like the Gary Kubiak years and parts of the Bill O'Brien years.
So Pro Football Talk reported earlier that he turned down the Broncos job, apparently. And it's because he's going to take the Texans job. Oh. He's a legacy player. He was drafted by the organization, so I kind of understand it. You hope that they're going to give him enough of an option to kind of run his own show and not be held back. I think also it's kind of time for him to leave at this point, because like I don't think he stands, like he's done as good of a job as you can ever do. And like, yeah, yesterday it was undisciplined, but like really, like, did anybody feel like the 49ers had a shot in this game if Purdy stayed healthy? You don't think at all?
I think after the second drive, I just felt like everyone, even the Niners, had written themselves off in that game.
See, I that's strange, because I did not take that. I took it as the defense was playing well, and then Purdy got hurt and they kind of stuck around for a little bit, but then that one drive where they had like 4 or 5 penalties, that was the backbreaker, and they just kind of gave up after that.
What was the moment that they could they could have just called the play dead, and the refs probably could have just left it as an incomplete pass, but they decided to challenge it? Was it the one Purdy got hurt on, and they called it a fumble and they gave it to Philadelphia?
Yeah, they did challenge that, and they gave it to Philadelphia as a fumble.
That was the moment, and by the way, that I felt the impending doom, though.
It was a fumble. like I didn't have any real problems with any of the penalties in those games, surprisingly.
I feel like they could have gotten away with, because of the forward momentum, saying it wasn't, like his hand was coming forward, and they probably could have gotten away with calling it incomplete. And I think it wouldn't have affected the outcome of this game, nor would it have done much to change what was going on at the game at that moment.
I honestly think it was an open hander. I think they got that right. It was an open handed, especially when they call it like right here, it's a fumble.
Yeah, but you know, we're gonna dig into this probably later, but like let's also pump the brakes and remember that their first drive, you know, wasn't altogether the Eagles' first drive wasn't altogether spectacular until they basically cheated and took an incomplete pass and played it off. I don't know if it's a cheat as much as it's a bad call by the ref. I felt like they owed him one.
It's strategy, as far as I'm concerned.
Because if I'm the Niners, that's a blunder on the Niners' part, in my opinion.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, when you see them, like, because that was a 4th down play, right? So they like, I think that Shanahan should have noticed they were getting to the line very quickly and threw the flag as quickly as possible, because
that's why I kind of blame the Niners on blundering that.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, you can tell when teams are like not sure if they ended up getting that. But like,
why are you going to hurry up?
They didn't even have time to show the replay on the broadcast because they were moving so quickly. So it was one of those scenarios where, like, if I just think it was a badly coached game by the 49ers. I think Warner getting hurt early, Bosa getting hurt early, and then Purdy out for the game. And by the way, he's out for 6 months. So it was
Bosa, the Bosa injury was bizarre because it happened while he was on the sideline. That was another. They had a lot. It was just misfortune after misfortune after misfortune for that Niners team.
Hence the question, right? Like, so from my perspective on the Eagles, I think they've had a significantly easy ride into the Super Bowl, but they are arguably, if not the best roster in the league. They are a top 3 roster, and they're a team that will roll over you pretty easily if you let them. So
you can be literally both. You can be good and have an easy schedule. And that's why this whole year has looked like they haven't tried. It's been an effortless looking year for them. The only time they tried really was against the Cowboys, right? When they lost.
They lost to the Commanders too. Am I wrong?
Mandos, baby.
They lost. They did
Let's
struggle against the Mandos.
That was a bad game for them.
Who was the other? Was it Vikings? Who was the other team that beat them?
They lost 2 in a row with Gardner Minshew. So I think it was the Vikings.
I don't recall.
I mean, they only lost to teams that made the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't like the argument of like, oh, they just had an easy schedule. Right, but like, you do realize you have to play the game still, and like at the end of the day, if you're beating up on bad teams, okay, you're a good team. So,
well, I mean, I think we saw that kind of with like the whole dynasty of the Patriots, right? Because each year they were guaranteed almost 6 wins because at that time the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills were atrocious, right? But they still had to beat out other good teams in the league to win, right? And then other times they were just smoke and mirrors, right? They got defrauded pretty early.
Yeah, I don't like that argument a lot of times. So they lost to Washington in week 10, 32-21. Then that was with Hurts. So that was the only game that Hurts lost this year. Week 16 and week 17 they lost to Dallas and New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay.
Yeah. So those were 2 games that they lost, one on the road, one at home. And the loss against Washington was at home as well.
It's the one that actually is interesting is the Saints, because
Saints defense is still pretty solid, and like Gardner Minshew, I'm not the big. I know he's kind of cool, and he's got the he gets a lot of. He's very memeable, but like I don't think he's really all that good. So
yeah, Going back to that question, Q, that you had about when did you think that game was over? As soon as Josh Johnson came in, and the first play from scrimmage was him getting completely destroyed by Hassan Reddick. Like, this is done. You're not going to be able to stop this.
That fumble where it was a bad a bad snap, and he just like doesn't know what to do for a second. He tries to like pick it up, then he's like, you know what, maybe I'll just fall on this. We'll call it a drive.
That was my moment where I'm like, this game's over, because that was right after the drive where they had the penalties on defense. Mind you, they had a bunch of stops, and it was just these like weird, stupid penalties that they were getting. And again, I say stupid because they were getting them, not because the refs were calling bad plays. And then after that, they scored it. So the Eagles scored a touchdown. That was the next drive. There was like 2 minutes left. I'm like, they're getting the ball after halftime. Go down the field. Even if you walk away with 3, you walk in 14-10 into halftime. McCaffrey had already gotten that touchdown, right? So like we're seeing that maybe they can like do an option offense to maybe mitigate the Josh Johnson thing. And then when he fumbled that ball and Philly took over, I'm like, yeah, that was it.
And then he got hurt. Yeah. And then Josh Johnson got a concussion.
Yeah.
When they were starting to fiddle with McCaffrey's helmet to put the mic or the headset in there, it's like, nah, man, they just need to end this game.
But also, like, how do you not have an emergency? Like, they only had two quarterbacks on their team. How do you not have an emergency quarterback?
So somebody actually mentioned that as a receiver on that team, they have the number 4 dual threat quarterback in the country that went to college and switched positions there. I don't remember who it was. I think it was like Juan Williams or something like that. But he was the number 4 dual threat quarterback in the country and was recruited as such. And then he switched positions. Like, nobody went over to him and be like, hey man, can you like look busy back there more than Josh Johnson or Brock Purdy?
You know what was the kind of the death nail for them was Elijah Mitchell being out. Because if Elijah Mitchell was out, they could have probably did like a pony formation with McCaffrey and Mitchell in the backfield and could have just kind of
options and things
did
like
it,
that.
Yeah, did like a bunch of like RPOs, just kind of be like Georgia Tech and just run the ball every single drive, but you don't know where the ball's going to. Him being out and McCaffrey having that heel injury, it just like
I feel like, you know, it didn't matter at that point because once they knew that they didn't have to put the coverage on, they had no throwing threat. It's just like, you know, stack the line and it's just, it was over, man. It was. Now I do have to ask you guys, how do you guys feel about Brock Purdy and his injury and that whole situation? Do you think he could have played? I mean, he went back in the game. Do you think he could have tried a little bit more, or how do you feel about the whole situation with him? Because he's injured enough not to be out there.
I mean, you said he was hurt for the next 6 months, right?
He is going to be out for the next 6 months. It was a bad injury.
Oh. Yeah, okay. So I think
was a bad injury.
I think he did exactly what his body was capable of doing.
He has a torn UCL in his throwing elbow, so it's bad.
You see that a lot with pitchers. So
yeah, very much a pitcher injury. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So cancel Gatto for that one.
Yeah, you know
seriously.
What? Forget it. Hashtag cancel Tom.
Okay.
Hashtag cancel Gatto.
But then here's the thing,
Purdy.
right? If it was that bad, then why'd they even let him back out in the first place?
Just hand the ball off, probably.
Yeah, he was just handing the ball off.
But like, isn't that when the medical team steps in and says this guy can't play anymore?
It's probably
or is it because it's playoffs? So now we replace.
They didn't have anybody else
for greatness, and therefore we allow it.
They probably just said, like, as long as he's just giving the ball to other people, it's probably not a big deal.
All right. Yeah, so uncancel me for that valid point.
This is pretty interesting though, because this puts his start of the season in doubt. So
I think Trey Lance is the front runner moving forward.
I think he was the front runner anyway, but like personally, because like Brock Purdy's a good kid, but like I just don't see what people are seeing with him.
I think it's a nice story. And I think if Purdy was going into next season healthy, it would have been a good competition to see who would have been the starter, Trey Lance or him. I don't think they go out and find somebody else because, frankly, they wouldn't have traded all those picks to get Trey Lance. Like, it makes no sense for them to go out and find somebody else. The thing now is, like, Trey Lance is going to be more healthy than Brock Purdy is, and there was nothing in that offense that said that Brock Purdy is just seeing above everybody else, and he's just like the bigger brain in the situation. Like, it's pretty easy offense to figure out because it's a lot of running plays and it's a lot of moving around to just find open receivers. So obviously I'm simplifying it probably a little bit more than it needs to, but Trey Lance is going to be the healthy person moving forward.
Yeah, I honestly, like, it's just also from a natural talent perspective that like Trey Lance is like, quarterbacks take time. I don't like this new thing that we're doing with these young quarterbacks that we're basically forcing them to be good year one. By the way, he got injured year one. So this was basically his rookie season. And like, we're basically like throwing these guys out at 23 years old saying they can't play anymore. And it's like, it's weird.
The other thing is too, is that Trey Lance had a season-ending injury in a leg, not in an elbow.
Broken leg, yeah.
Yeah. So Brock Purdy is coming back with a fully reconstructed elbow to throw, which it's 6 month surgery. It's probably not going to be a full strength for at least another year.
Yeah. Is it going to be a Tommy John surgery? Is that likely the type of surgery they perform on this one?
I don't know for sure. But it probably will be something similar because they actually said it during the broadcast, and it was actually looked like it's actually correct. Yeah, so yeah, UCL is a Tommy John surgery. So yeah, most likely. So I mean, like we've seen like Tom baseball, like how often does it like they come back the next year and they're not like 100% yet? They have to like go through the process a couple more times, like go through another year before it strengthens and everything. So Purdy, like theoretically, may not even like play that much this year in 2023. This is a devastating injury. So
yeah, I'm looking up if there are any like notable UCL injuries.
Adam Schefter said he is seeking a second opinion. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just smart to do, but
well, I would also argue that the UCL diagnosis, they're going to want to check that probably first, right? Because there's a lot of different things in the elbow that could be wrong. I mean, I had a tendon issue in my arm, and like they're all so different, man. Because he might not have the throwing power, but he has all different range of motion to do everything else, right?
Right.
And
so
that's why,
Gatto, I had mentioned this in the Discord yesterday between the three of us. That was actually the same injury that Drew Brees had in his last game for San Diego.
Interesting. Okay.
Look what happened to him.
Now did he didn't miss the following year, right?
No, but he basically had the exact same thing happen where his elbow was twisted in a way that basically, I mean, I remember him walking back to the sideline and he had his elbow like this up to his shoulder because he couldn't move it. And I mean, Drew Brees is a beast. But I also think too that offense helped him out a lot. And I don't think it was until like that second year where they really started to stretch the field and like dial it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anything, he came back and had honestly the best years of his career after that. So it's certainly not a death sentence to your career or anything.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. There was basically no second half in the game. Yeah, there wasn't. Third quarter started, and that was it. It was over.
Yeah, I felt like everybody, like all fans of the NFL, kind of got ripped off with that game, right? Like it's a big week of football, and I just felt like we were losing out by having that game.
Well, we got a juicy one in Kansas City, like
we got
immediately following that.
Yeah, for sure.
So